More than 700,000 people live in South Carolina's rural areas, making access to public transportation, job training, and employment challenging, if not impossible. A new study has been released to help find better ways to link our rural population with opportunities. We're joined by Daniel Brock, a regional strategist for Berkeley-Charleston-Dorchester Council of Governments. Good to see you, my friend.
Hello, how are you?
Doing well, doing well. Yeah, when you don't have access to transportation, you don't have access to a lot of things. And I would imagine that living in a rural part of our state makes it really tough to get to those jobs. We've got a lot going on and people who can't take advantage of it.
That's right. And that's one thing that was underscored by the study. A lot of the opportunities for job training and jobs themselves are in the centralized areas, sort of along the I-26 corridor. But then when you look at somewhere like Berkeley County, which is about the size of Rhode Island, when you get up to the northern end of the county, it's a much different story and a long haul to get to some of these opportunities. So what we wanted to do was take a look at who's living out there, what their skills are, and then how we can connect them to some of these opportunities.
I think that's wonderful. It's time very well spent. Let's talk a little bit about the unemployment rate. In a good year, I don't want to necessarily judge by this particular year and our situation at present, but during a good year, the state's unemployment rate is one thing, but rural areas, they suffer a little bit more. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. Obviously, it's a different scenario right now with COVID-19, but in a regular year, we'll call it, the unemployment rate in the rural areas is generally slightly higher than the more urbanized area, and then in some pockets of the region can be as high as 30%. When you think about Berkeley, Charleston, and Dorchester counties, you think of a place that is thriving, that is seeing a lot of growth, a lot of jobs, but there are areas that are not receiving some of that benefit to this point. And this is an effort undertaken by the COG, the Rural Workforce Transportation Study, to say how can we link everyone that is farther out in northern Charleston County, southern Charleston County, outer Dorchester, outer Berkeley, to some of these opportunities as well.
Because let's just face it, even with some of the more populated metropolitan areas of South Carolina, let's just take Charleston, for instance, CARTA does a great job in connecting people and with the whole public transportation downtown. But when you start getting a little bit farther out, you kind of have to have a car around here. You really can't get by without some sort of reliable transportation.
Sure, and it does become a difficult scenario. Again, when you look at a place that is as large as Berkeley County, or you're going all the way up to 95 almost in Dorchester County for traditional public transportation to work. Now, the Tri-County Link system does work on a flag stop basis and has routing out there that does work to connect folks as best possible. But what this study has shown us is that we really need to go to where the people are and bring the transit to them as opposed to having them come to the transit. And that is why the big takeaway from this is looking at a van pool program on a regional level that will connect folks sort of in a right size, right fit for the user, as opposed to a one size fits all transit system alone.
Right. When you were describing how industry is kind of down the central corridor of 26, I know Senator Tim Scott, he has been a huge proponent of opportunity zones throughout the state, which would essentially help with those particular areas start to blossom a little bit, if you will, in terms of jobs and opportunities and companies coming. But is it not terribly realistic that some of the larger companies to establish themselves in these rural areas just in order to give people those jobs? Is it more like you got to create the places and then a way to bring those people to the more centralized areas?
Sure, I think that's definitely the first step, right? So whether it's training through some of our partners with like Trident Tech, or whether it's a new job opportunity, I think just today Walmart announced that they're going to be opening a distribution center in Dorchester County. When those opportunities come along, we as a region have to make sure that everyone can take part and benefit in those opportunities. And what that looks like right now is connecting people from those outer areas, to the more centralized locations, which it does make sense. They're along these transit corridors. You've got Interstate 26, you've got these rail lines, you've got the Port of Charleston, which is such a huge economic driver. So for logistics companies and for these big manufacturers, being in those locations is what makes the most sense.
So when are we going to find out when those van pools are going to be ready to roll?
Sure. So we already have some funding in hand, and we're looking at what sorts of vans work. It could be anywhere from a 6-passenger up to a 15-passenger. And I think you're going to see that grow over the coming months and the future. Obviously, there has been impact by the COVID-19 situation. Our original plan was to have a pilot in place by the end of the year, and that is still possible. But again, we'll just have to monitor what COVID-19 looks like and then grow from there.
For anyone who's interested in learning more, who want to keep up to date on what's going on, where should they go?
Sure. All of this information and all of the work that BCDCOG is doing is available at bcdcog.com.
Perfect. Daniel, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Great to see you. We're back in 2 minutes.